Welcome to another episode of How I Discovered My Gift with yours truly, David D. Simons. I am excited to have today's guest on the show. Y'all are in for an amazing treat. Jamie R. Wright is an award-winning resilience and encouragement speaker, advocate, activist, coach, and domestic violence survivor with a mission to provide survivor-led awareness, empowerment, and advocacy to underrepresented and historically marginalized communities impacted by domestic violence. Jamie has appeared on 60 Minutes, BBC News, NBC, CBS, Fox 26, and numerous podcasts, and featured in various articles around the world. Jamie has also appeared on the Doctors and HGTV's House Hunters TV show. Welcome to the show, my sister from another mister.
Brother David, I am honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's truly an excitement to have you. We've had some serious, amazing conversations, and I just want the listeners to kind of get a peer into some of that. So let's dive right in. Jamie, take us to childhood, right? From little Jamie to adult Jamie. What has been the process and discovery of that?
Oh yeah, David, brother, you didn't. Yeah, you went right into it, huh?
Oh yeah.
Oh well, hey, nothing to it but to do it. We are not playing any games, are we? So, me, Jamie, as a little girl, I grew up in Southeast Oklahoma. Very humble beginnings. Didn't recognize how humble they were until probably about 6 years ago. I have one beautiful, amazing older sister. Mom really don't know my dad, but nonetheless, I've had a beautiful support system. My grandmother has always been my rock. She transitioned to the upper room last year, but yeah. So that's me. I'm from Southeast Oklahoma, humble country, all the things, all the things.
Beautiful. So growing up, did you know clearly what your gifts were, or how did you find that?
Oh, that's a beautiful question, David. So I didn't know where like what my gifts were until 2020 until I was put in a situation that the only thing that I could do was to be strong and reconcile what was going on in my life at the time, which was me living at a homeless shelter in the Houston area. As a result of domestic violence, I essentially fell into homelessness right as the pandemic was unfolding. And so it wasn't until that time, David, that I recognized that the Creator put in me the gift of encouragement.
Mm,
The Creator has put in me the gift of resilience. And when I was at the shelter, I asked him, I said, Lord, if you would help me navigate the one of the darkest moments in my life. I promise you that I will share what I now know is my gift of encouragement and resilience in such a way that hopefully it empowers at that time individuals, but now I know to empower communities. So I was put in a position, David, that my back was totally up against the wall. So as a little girl, did I understand that was my gift? Absolutely not. But
mm.
fast forwarding to now, I do. Now I understand how people are like, oh, you're smiling. Oh, you're. I'm like, oh, okay, that's why you gave these teeth to me and this bubbly personality because you knew that I would need it to not only overcome but to help others overcome too.
Wow. So can you take us through, if you don't mind, what happened in 2020? What others that may be listening that probably won't have the courage to share are probably facing silently, which a lot of people do. So if you don't mind kind of going into the detail.
Absolutely, I'd be honored to. So in 2018, I met an amazing man. He is a man of the cloth, meaning that he is I used to say was, but he still is an ordained minister, David. When we met, my mind was blown in that I thought I was finally going to experience love like I'd always wanted as a little girl. The love that, oftentimes we as little girls look at on cartoons and dream about. And I was especially like excited and mind blown because I never thought that I would have the love because I was carrying around such shame, coming as a result of coming home the first time at 14 years old pregnant. So fast forward to have a man, especially a man of the cloth, and this brother was fine, David. He was tall and dark and handsome and all the things.
Mm-hmm.
I was elated, just elated. So the relationship, it happened and unfolded very quickly. So did the abuse. About 3 months into our relationship of us dating, he took his hands and put them around my neck and shook me by the neck. And at the time, David, it happened so quick and it was so inconsistent from the person that I was learning that he was. It took me a little bit to process what had happened. And fast forward, the unfortunately the physical and what I now know was verbal and emotional abuse, it never stopped. It just got worse. And I honestly thought, David, that we'd be able to pray it away. So, although the abuse started very early in our relationship, I still made the decision to marry him in 2020. And so, after marrying him in the Dallas Fort Worth area, I relocated from Dallas Fort Worth to Houston, Texas, where he was living and had bought us a house. And I thought, like, oh, this is it. The abuse is gonna, end. He bought this, beautiful house for us. We're attending church. We're doing all the things. However, in March of 2020, things started to get really volatile. And by April the 23rd, 2020, I literally went from this beautiful house in the suburbs of Houston, Texas, to a homeless shelter in the heat, in the thick of the pandemic. With my, my college degrees and with my, my praying self, I became homeless at the Houston Area Women's Center from April to July of 2020. Now, David, here's what I recognized at the time. I just went into the shelter. I had one pack of clothes. I packed my, work computer. I went into the shelter initially with every intention of going back home to my husband, every
Mm-hmm.
intention of making it work. And so I will never forget the morning after I got to the shelter. I went to see my case manager, and my case manager, gave me like a homeless letter, like a letter that explaining my situation of being in homelessness, and I'm just following the flow. And she's giving me all these material, workforce, information, food stamp information, the things that people tend to receive when they go into homeless shelters. And my case manager encouraged me to go see the psychotherapist. Now, at this time, I didn't even know what a psychotherapist was, because
Wow.
in my world, my grandmother was a beautiful lady. I have beautiful aunts and uncles, and we just didn't talk about therapy and counseling. But nonetheless, still going with the flow
Yeah.
of things, I went to see the therapist. And I don't know what shifted me in the conversation with the therapist, but something shifted. And in the moment that we were talking, she started to unpack what was going on. In that she was using like tools, which are like one tool is called the power and control wheel. So she's using tools out of a textbook example of a domestic violence situation. And so it was through the therapist that I recognized that, oh, this is not normal. It's not normal to be hit and to call names and to be called names. And so in that moment, what helped that shift, that profound shift happen in me is the therapist explained to me that if I decided to go home, that was, she would empower me to do that. And also, on the other hand, if I decided to stay at the shelter, that she would help me understand why I accepted the abuse. And that shift in the moment, I decided to stay there at the shelter. So I never went into the shelter initially thinking that I was going to live there for nearly 3 months.
Whoa, that's heavy. What was the straw that broke the camel's back for you to say I'm out?
Yeah. So the straw that broke the camel's back to tell me that I was out, but I was not going to go back, was at the point that the therapist explained to me that when I go back home that I needed to understand my partner's triggers. Now, meaning I didn't even know what a trigger was, but and she explained to me what it was, and she says, and here's what's called a safety plan so that when things get volatile again, you can remove yourself out of the situation safely. And the straw in that moment, for lack of a better terms that broke this camel's back, was me understanding the gravity of if I made the decision to go back home, that my children could very well bury me as a result of me saying something to my partner that triggered him, that would have caused him to possibly take my life.
Wow.
So I had to
Did you
wrap
ever
my head around that reality that I might not make it out of my house again alive if I do decide to go back.
Wow. And sorry to revisit the trauma, but I feel like it's gonna help some other people. Were there moments where you thought your life was on the edge of not being here?
Absolutely. Two times that I will never, ever, ever in my life forget. The first time, he had taken me on a beautiful trip to Hawaii, and that beautiful trip turned ugly very quick when he literally strangled me until I blacked out. I remember struggling up against the bed to take his hand, try to get his hands off my neck. And the next thing I remember is waking up facing up with my like laying on the floor. So he strangled me until I blacked out. My vocal cords were, my neck was sore. I couldn't hardly talk for about 3 weeks. And then the second time was the time that I called 911 and fled to the shelter when he hit me with my laptop in my face and knocked my teeth loose.
Whoa. Whoa. Um, that's heavy. Um, and it's kind of shifting gears a bit, but you went from such an extreme abusive environment to now creating an organization that helps those that are in domestic violence environments, and even the people that are causing it, to show them love. Can you explain that? Because that's extreme, right? Like talk to us about this. How did this develop?
Yeah, brother, and I'm super stoked and excited about it too. You're have you ever had someone, or have you ever been someone that you catch a good sale on a good product, or something's good going on, so you
Yeah,
want to tell everybody that you know?
yeah.
The same with the dynamics of domestic violence. I grew up watching my mom be beaten, and so I had normalized domestic violence in my adulthood, not knowing it, but I did. So the times that I was getting physically, verbally, emotionally abused, I didn't even recognize it was abuse. So now, staying in line and staying fully committed to what the promise I made to my creator, it's like I've been on and will continue to be on a mission to help people that are experiencing harm and causing it, saying, do you know what this is? And do you know you don't have to live like this?
Mm,
Do you know that there's a possibility that you're hurting the person that you love because you're hurting yourself? And do you know that there's hope, and there's practical tools on the other side of that you don't have to live like this?
mm,
So it's my absolute honor to take what I've gone through and reframe it in such a way that my goal is to eradicate domestic violence, and especially eradicating domestic violence in historically marginalized and underrepresented communities. Because, David,
Yeah.
what I found out on my unapologetic mission is that domestic violence, now this is the CDC, these are not Jamie's statistics, right? These are statistics that are being captured out of the United States government based on the data that's, at the local level. Domestic violence causes an estimated $8 billion economic impact in the United States of America. We're not talking
Hmm.
about a third world we're talking about right here in the great USA. 8
Gee.
point it's like $8.1 billion.
Jeez.
And so when we look at domestic violence through that lens, meaning through the lens of medical insurance rates going up, through the lens
Mm.
of lost labor, we're both
Yeah.
building our businesses, small
Hmm.
businesses. We know it are the backbone of the economy here in the United States. But when we look at it through those lenses, I can't help but to continue to create solutions that will solve the problem and one day eradicate the problem. Because not only
Yeah.
are we looking at loss of life and communities being impacted in ways that will have ripple effects for years and years and years to come, we're looking at it from the economic piece. So that's why I
Mm.
do what I do. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, when we talk about it, and we've talked about this, David, we've had the honor of masterminding this back and forth.
Yeah.
When we talk about it from a spiritual point of view, I don't
Yeah.
care what higher power you believe in. We're both believers of Jesus Christ. I don't care
Hmm.
what you believe in. If you believe in anything outside of yourself, we know that that is not the portion that the Creator has designed us to live out.
True.
In the Christian faith, we know that God sent Jesus to die for our sins. Jesus is already sacrificed. So why are we walking around here sacrificing ourselves and sacrificing the quality of our lives for something that
Right.
truly can be addressed through the lens of love and through the
Hmm.
lens of economic impact?
Truth. Truth. That's so real. So tell us about your organization, the name of it, what you do, because I find it so intriguing, right? Um, if this is like the ultimate example of the love of God, in my opinion, right?
Mhm.
Because God loves us beyond all the wrongful things we do and shows us what the Bible calls agape love. And if I was to say, what does agape love look like? It's what the work you're doing, in my opinion.
Mm.
So tell the listeners, because I want them to really understand what you're doing in your organization and all the elements.
Yeah, so Jamie R. Wright LLC is a for profit organization that we provide empowerment and advocacy and awareness to underrepresented and historically marginalized communities through conversations like this, through speaking engagements, and what the creator has downloaded in my spirit the last year, through real estate. So I am working on 3 projects right now, three in Oklahoma, Southeast Oklahoma, and one here in the Houston, Texas area, to provide safe and attainable housing to survivors impacted by domestic violence. And one of the projects that's carved out, we're working to create housing for people that have checkered past that might not necessarily qualify for a traditional apartment, but yet they've turned their lives around and they just need that safe, emotionally safe house to regain their economic stability. And so, without violating fair housing laws and discriminating, my heart posture is to help men with that housing initiative. So, because I recognize, brother David, that as God has put me on all these platforms, House Hunter and 60 Minutes and all that stuff, I can empower and encourage and inspire people with my story, But if they have no means to live in an environment that's conducive to them thriving, have I really done God's work?
Mm,
Have I truly? No, I'm just scratching the surface. So that's the for-profit arm, is the empowerment speaking and real estate piece. And then when
hmm.
my grandmother transitioned last year in May, I created a nonprofit, and it's called Limmerly's Legacy. And Limmerly's Legacy is specifically designed to help survivors that's been impacted by domestic violence and their children regain their economic stability. And the economic stability piece could be through housing, it could be through life skills, it could be through job training. So the creator has been so gracious to me to connect me with people in Southeast Oklahoma that have rallied around and continue to rally around me to make sure that the not only the nonprofit but the nonprofit programs get off and on its way so that we can start to instantly provide impact into the community.
That's beautiful. And if I'm not mistaken, you have an initiative that is like a, is it a parade, or is it like a rally, something that you're doing for the, usually those that are causing the domestic
Yeah.
violence, right?
You remember, David, and I can
Yeah.
talk about it. Since we've
Yeah.
talked, I filed my trademark paperwork and all
Wow.
that. Thank you, brother, for bringing that up. So, yes, I have nine amazing men and women that I met at Bishop T.D. Jakes's International Leadership Conference a couple of months ago that he had in Dallas, Texas. And so, what's grown out of that is this beautiful initiative that we're working on. So, please, David's audience, my audience, stay tuned. This initiative is going to black the enemy's eye. It's going to literally shift the generational currency back into the hands and the hearts of men. And it's called the Men Too Movement.
Mm.
We are fighting to make sure that men regain their rightful places in the community, in their families, in the world. Because what we recognize, David, from a spiritual and from a practical standpoint, the enemy is after our families. And he knows that if he can break and divide a family, then if the family is broken and divided, that means the community is broken and divided. If the community is broken and divided, that means that the country is broken and divided. And now is not the time for any of us to be divided at any level. I don't care if you're black, white, rich, poor. This is not the time, and especially in the United States of America,
True.
doesn't matter what you look like. It's
Very true.
boiling down to the have and the have nots, right? And
Mm.
there is people that are all around this world potentially waiting for us to continue to implode on each other. But the
Yeah.
bright side and the beautiful side is I know when men regain their rightful places.
There we go. There we
So
go.
that's the initiative that we're working on. So please stay tuned.
Wow.
It's called Men Too Movement.
That's amazing. Because the reality is, I know that you're going to have a lot of supporters, but you're probably also going to get a lot of, let's just say, opposition as well. And what's your message to those that hear something like that, the Men Too movement, and, well, what are you doing, Jamie? Why are you, like you should be all, especially after what you've gone through, you should all only support things that are going to empower the woman, which you are doing. But what do you say to that and people that say that?
That's an awesome question. Let's get to it. We out here now. Let's get to
Yeah.
it. What I would simply say to that is we have to allow the history and data and not just emotions to drive our decisions of today.
Mm,
Historically, we know. Have you heard that saying, the rule of thumb? Have you ever heard that? The rule
yeah.
of thumb
Hmm.
is when we
Right.
peel that back, David, and we understand where that came from. The rule of thumb came from it being legal in the United States of America for a man to beat his wife and children up until the
What?
1970s. Yes, sir. Google it, audience. Google. It was legal
I didn't
as
know that.
long as
That's
that, as long,
crazy.
and it's not the them, it's not the theys, it's the him. As long as he beat his wife and kids with an object that was no wider than his thumb, that was legal. So when we look at the history in the data, take the emotions out, because we're creating solutions to the problem. We're not him hawing
Mm,
around about the problem. We don't have time for that. There's generations coming behind us that are being impacted because we're him hawing around. When we
wow.
look at that, I would just ask the persons in the people, places, of things, where do you think that those individuals went to? Those potentially, without there being statistics to research to show, because there's not research yet. I'm on a research panel right now looking at battery intervention programs through the Office
Yeah.
of Violence Against Women. So we're starting to collect the data. So when we peel that back and we look at it, we say, where did those people go? Those people, those men, or the people that are causing harm, which is typically men statistically, those might be the little boys that were getting beaten. Those might be
Mm,
the little boys that were watching their fathers beat their mother. And oh, by the way,
wow.
those might be the little boys that as a little boy, he knew he couldn't do anything. So as a
Mm,
man, it's manifesting in ways that are causing harm potentially to our community. And I would just ask
wow.
them to consider the possibility that the people that were shoveling with shame are are those little boys that were trapped in an environment that taught them that hitting was the right thing to do. So in my humble opinion, from a Christian and a non-Christian standpoint, we owe it to those little boys that are men now. We owe it to them to create spaces for them to unlearn the
Mm,
behavior that they may have learned, and to learn how to love themselves. Because truly,
wow.
and this is coming out of my own walk, David, truly
Mm,
when we love ourselves, and truly when we have a relationship with the higher power, and we see that God within us, we're not
mm,
going to intentionally cause harm to anyone.
that's true.
And when we
That's
do, we'll have such humility that we'll go back to those people, places, and things and ask for forgiveness. I'm walking that thing out right now. It's manifesting in my own life.
wow.
So I would just ask them to consider looking at it from a different lens. And once we look at it from a different lens and we create safe spaces, meaning places, spaces that people, specifically men, can go into and be vulnerable enough to get the healing and the deliverance that they need, and
Right.
then they still continue to cause harm after
Yeah.
we've given them the opportunity and the practical tools, then let's shovel them with shame and let's throw them away. Maybe. I
Wow.
don't know about throwing them away,
Yeah.
but at least give them a chance. You cannot throw
Yeah.
people away. And not to get on a tangent, I will,
Yeah.
from 2024 going on, I will not be a part of any organization, any system that throws people away without giving them a
Mm,
chance. I remember how
mm,
I felt when I was thrown away by members in my community when I came home pregnant at 13 years old. So I
mm,
will not be a part of any system that does that without giving someone a second chance. You think about it. Had I been thrown away, and my grandmother and people in my family, like my aunts and people along the way in my junior high school,
mm.
had they thrown me away too, I wouldn't be right here talking to you today.
Wow. Wow. So it comes full circle. So you're literally giving an opportunity for a group of people, men specifically, that would have literally nowhere else to go to learn, most likely to learn to reverse some of these things, the traumas that they've seen in their childhood, or the things like you said they've were passed down and learned behaviors that are not right. Like I think about that, like as you're saying it, like where do they go, you know, if they do want to change, you know, uh is not a collective like that. So you're the brave one who's listening to God and putting this together to impact people, be praying and supporting that organization. I think it's a remarkable work you're doing. So with all that said, I mean, what is your message? So there's obviously a heart and a message. I want you to speak to two people. Like, if you had a room full of males that unfortunately cause trauma and bring domestic violence into households, and I know that domestic violence is not 100% always men, because there are women out there that are causing the same thing. But let's, for the purposes of your organization, let's speak to that one side. If you had a room full of, let's say, 10,000 men, you're giving a keynote there. I would love to hear what you would say to them. And then you have the same 10,000 women and men, or women abused domestically and in their households. What would you say to them in a
Yeah.
keynote?
Powerful, powerful question. So to address the, which is typically men, like you said, to address a room full of harm doers, I would just literally unpack my heart in front of them. I would take them from when I was 5 years old, not knowing that being sexually mishandled by my stepfather was a bad thing, and how it manifested in my life, in a way that by the time I was 12, I was smoking crack cocaine out of a Coors can, came home pregnant. At 14, by the time I was 19 years old, I'd been pregnant four additional times. So it manifested in me being promiscuous. And it also manifested in ways that caused harm along the way to the people that I love. Some people would try to hug me and I would cut them because I was broken myself. So I would literally lay my life and my story at their feet to consider
Mm,
that we have the ability to edify and love, but we have the ability to tear down and break.
yeah.
And looking at me, I stand here before you, two sides of that. So if we have to choose, do you want to break or do you want to edify? Which would you choose? And I would pose that question to them. And then I would leave them thinking about the possibility of them causing harm because they were harmed,
Mm,
hurting because they are hurt, and there is no community yet to allow them to unpack their stories, but it's coming. It's
wow.
coming. And on the flip side, with women and people that receive harm, it would be literally laying at their feet my story and encouraging them to be accountable, in that a person can truly only do to us what we allow them.
Mm,
And for me, I recognize I was asking the man in my life to do something for me that I didn't know at the time, but now I do, and that was to love me. I didn't love
mm,
myself. I had such shame wrapped around me,
mm,
um, that I just literally did not love myself. And so, going back to what we were talking about a couple of questions ago, as I began to love myself, literally, it it anguishes me to even think about causing harm to someone else. So I would challenge the room of people that's receiving harm to think about the possibility of living a life free of harm and free of trauma, and
mm,
asking them to hold themselves accountable for living the life that they want to live, and
mm.
potentially get help, whether it's help through therapy, a coach. Get help, because we, don't have to sacrifice in this one life that the Creator has given us. Jesus paid the price already.
Amen to that. Wow. Beautiful statements on for both audiences. I think that's commendable, admirable, and wow, what a message that you have for the world. And so tell us about what has transpired, in this movement? You said, you were on 60 Minutes, multiple places. Were you talking about this essentially? Where is this story? Where you want this message to go? Obviously, you want to impact. It sounds like this is a global mission because this happens not just here in the U.S., but all over the world. So, talk to us about that.
Yeah. David, if you so I started the first time I spoke out about what was going on and what I had been going through and what was I was going through was on 60 no, it was on BBC News in the fall, right, like two weeks after I came to the shelter. So March, April, like April, Mayish of 2020. BBC News. My voice was, they like the news station. They disguised everything about me. When you listen, if you ever was to listen to the segment, I sound like a college age Caucasian girl, right? And so, as I literally can see my growth in my healing journey, like manifest from victim to victor
Mm,
to thriver, like in the
mm,
last 3 years, in this last 3 to 4 years. And so where I'm taking the message now, where the creator's like, you got this. You keep me at the forefront of this movement. I got you, little girl. Is literally, I don't care who you've done wrong to, how much wrong you've received. If you truly, not to get all Bible-y, biblical. If you say you're sorry and you truly mean that and you turn from that way, that there is a huge amount of deliverance and freedom on the other side of overcoming that. And the joy of the Lord really can be your strength. So it's like literally no matter what you've gone through, you can overcome it. The key is making the decision. And from a practical standpoint, the key is remembering that God made us in his image. So the God within us can allow us to overcome literally anything. So that's my message now. And as a believer of Jesus Christ, we have a fundamental responsibility to overcome. We should not walk around as believers downtrodden at the same time. We're essentially marketing for God and for Jesus. We have to
that's good.
remember that because life. Life will show
Hmm.
up in ways that is just not fair, in ways that will have us questioning, Lord, did you forget about us? But when we make the decision to reframe that thing and turn that thing inside and out, and literally help God, I mean, allow God to help us turn that evil thing into good, Brother David, I'll be then took off running around here. Cause
Wow.
that's all, like
Phenomenal.
that's all, like that's literally all that I'm on right now. We can't
Mm,
overcome. The joy of the Lord can be your strength. He
that's
will
right.
give you beauty for ashes.
Mm,
If he did it for me, I absolutely know he can do it for you.
that's right. Wow. That's
And I'm
phenomenal.
gonna put you up in a house, and help you get your stuff together in the meantime. Come on over here to this other side so we can help people that are suffering.
Wow. Such a progression. I mean, of um, from where going from being abused, like you said, to um, victim to victor to transformation agent, right? Like now you're no, I can only imagine, if this is the acceleration that's happening, I can only imagine what's going to happen within your movement and within, the lives that will be touched all around the world. With this, it's a a tough topic to talk about, and so I want to talk about another element which you and I had a conversation about, which unfortunately doesn't get a lot of conversation about, which is um, males that are abused and molested, as I was in my youth, as well. And I never really shared that publicly, but we had a conversation about it, and it was just intriguing. And then you shared with me some stats. I was like, so if you want to go into that little bit of that, of just you know on the male side of what happens um from sexual molestation in their youth.
Absolutely. Well, bro, brother Dave, I first want to honor you for your truth, and I got emotional because it's confirmation of what God has downloaded into me. So I honor you. Thank you for that. And just that, just your truth alone is gonna continue to spark this movement. 1 in 6 men, 1 in 6 men, and that's just the men that's reported the sexual assault have been sexually assaulted in their lives.
Wow.
That's the current stat. 1 in 6. One in
Goodness.
1 in 7 men are survivors of domestic violence. But when we
Wow.
talk about sexual assault, literally only 1 in 6. And one of the things that there was 3 stories. I get men sharing with me often. That's how I know, like, Lord, like, okay, I hear you. The 3 stories in now to include yours, since you
Mm-hmm.
shared and I appreciate it. The
Mm-hmm.
first story that touched me in a way that just blew me back, David, was this young man was explaining to me that he has fallen in love, and this is not years ago. This is recently. This is within the last 3 years, last years that I've been advocating. He fell in love with the person that started off molesting him and sexually mishandling him in his family as a little boy. Now, this person is kin to him. Fast forward, he's a very grown, productive adult right now. He's struggling with having this love for this man that is a part of his family that does not want to be in a relationship with him. So he struggles with depression and all the things. And so one of the things that this young man shared with me that his therapist told encouraged him to ask the person that he's fallen in love with is, why can't you choose me? And why did you choose me if you can't choose me now? The young man said the person that he's fallen in love with said he chose him because he knew he couldn't get pregnant.
Wow.
Sit with that for a minute.
Jeez.
He knew that as a man, as a young boy, that if he sexually mishandled him, that there would be no evidence of that.
Wow.
Blew me back. Still blows me back. I was at a conference. This very prestigious man came up to me, said he appreciated me sharing, and that at 50 something years old, he was finally going to go home and tell his parents his truth while they were still alive. And his truth was, in the 3rd grade, on his way home from school, a neighbor pulled him in a house and raped him when he was in the 3rd grade. Said, Jamie, I've never told anybody this.
Mm.
He said, and his parents would ask him, why did you, like, what happened? Something changed. And he never would say anything. Okay, Lord.
Wow.
Um, the last was when I realized, like, wait a minute, there's a hypocrisy here for men and women. I was talking to this brother at the gas station, fresh out of the penitentiary, had served like 17 years. And we're sitting there fellowshipping, and he begins to tell me about when he was a young boy growing up in the Houston, like the outer parts of Houston. He oftentimes would get in fights at school because his mom, and this is back like in the 80s, 90s, when the crack epidemic hit black and brown communities super hard, right?
Yeah.
That he was getting in trouble at school, and eventually got kicked out of school for fighting because people would make fun of his mom that had fallen into crack cocaine addiction. and prostitution and the things and all the things in the small community, and people would make fun of her. So he would beat people up, got kicked out of school. So as I'm sitting there with him, David, just thanking God that I have the honor to hold space for him, I simply asked him, "How did that make you feel?" That brother looked up to the sky, said, "Nobody's ever asked me that."
Hmm.
A 40-something-year-old man, 17 years in prison, crack addicted mom, all the things, the Lord only knows what he had to endure when he was in prison to survive. Nobody had ever asked him how
Wow.
he felt. So those are
Whew.
stories
It's
that
heavy.
that has shaped the Men Too movement.
Wow.
Yeah,
Powerful.
I am absolutely y'all's advocate because I got the space
Respect. Respect.
being a woman. So
Yeah.
yeah.
How can people get plugged in with the Men Too movement and everything you got going on? What's the best way right
That is a
now?
beautiful question. Yeah, so I'm on all social media platforms at Jamie, and that's JAMIE rwright.com. We have a Men to movement. It's men, MEN, the number two movement.com. I have a website, jamiewright.com. So yeah, like the Men Too movement, please stay tuned. I'm picking your brain, brother, because
No
I
doubt.
can't act like I know what y'all need. I just know y'all need.
This is
So yeah, that's how you please follow me on social media. I am intentional about making sure my pages leave people inspired, informed, and
love it.
uplifted. Yeah,
That's phenomenal. And the last question we always ask that you weren't prepped on is what's the difference between one's gift and one's purpose? One's gift and one's purpose.
ooh, that's good. You remind me of Dr. Del Toro saying that, something like that, hitting me with that 1-2 checker like that.
Yeah.
Uh, shout out to Dr. Del.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
uh, the difference between one's gift and purpose is the purpose is why the Creator sent us here. When He was weaving our hair and making our hands, I'm purpose Jamie to uplift, inspire, encourage. And my gift is the way that I choose to now I realize his choice because he's a gentle guy, how I choose to use that. Right. So my
Mhm.
gift is edifying people with my words and just something as simple as my smile. I've been called smiley from like different people from all over. So I was like, there's got to be something to
Mhm.
this. So my gift is the way that I live my purpose out. My gift is
Respect.
I don't care. I'm gonna die on the throne advocating for men that cause harm. I mean, I'm a come on, let's bring it. I'll
Respect.
be the person because I'm going down in the books with y'all.
Respect. That's love.
My gift, the way that I walk my
Beautiful.
purpose out.
Beautiful. Jamie, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure. Thank you for blessing us with your gift today and impacting so many people. Truly appreciate you and keep up the great work in the
Yes,
movement.
sir. It was an honor to be here. Thank you. And you keep up the good work, and I got your back, brother. If anything you need from me, I'm here.
Appreciate you, sis. Thank you.